Let's bring this special meeting to order. The need for an executive session under CRS 246402, parens 4, parens B, legal advice. Board to conference with an attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific matters. Can I get a motion?
Motion to move into exec.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I've brought this up before, and I'm bringing it up again. As I understand it, there are two conditions for going into executive session, and we're only complying with the first. The second one, I've read from the CRS, and I'll read from it once again. It says that identification of the particular matter to be discussed in as much detail as possible without compromising the purpose. And I know that our council disagrees with that, as do the board, but I want to notify the board, the public, and let you know that from this point forward, I consider these illegally convened executive sessions, and therefore I am not bound by any code of secrecy regarding what's discussed in executive sessions. And I will continue that position until the board decides to change its position. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I do disagree with that opinion. I've conveyed that to the board several times, and I would reiterate that any privilege is held by the board as a whole and not individual board members. It is not something that individual board members can waive. It has to be dealt with by the board as a whole. And if any particular board member is going to refuse to honor confidentiality or privilege that attaches to executive sessions, then that would be grounds for the board to exclude them from participating in those meetings.
And Mr. Chairman, I think we should have some impartial outside counsel give a reading on that. You know, from the very day that we hired our counsel, he represented the superintendent and a majority of the board rather than being impartial toward and giving impartial advice to the full board. And so I think it's appropriate to hire some third party to render a reading on that and a legal opinion. Thank you.
Okay. So we're going to move into executive session. Dr. Hyde, we will get an opinion. Jonathan is our attorney. He's the board's attorney. He works for the Board of Education.
Why did we just have him recently work for the superintendent as recently as this last week? If he works for the board, I don't know why he's doing work for the superintendent.
Well, what do you guys think about that? He works for the Board of Education. He is our attorney.
So what is he doing work for the superintendent for? If he's accountable to us exclusively?
Not exclusively. The superintendent works for the Board of Education, which is us 5. So he represents us plus the superintendent if we need some things done. Now, are we going into executive session or what we finna do right now? Because I don't have time to sit up here and argue back and forth about are we going into executive session, yes or no.
We have a motion on the floor, and we have a second, and we were in discussion. So, I hear your opinion, and I hear everybody's opinion. So is there any other discussion? Can I have roll call, Monica, please?
Mr. Archuleta?
Aye.
Dr. Hyde?
No.
Mrs. Quintana?
Aye.
Mr. Rolla?
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
The light's on. Let's get started. It's 5:35. So I'd like to call
Just
this
like to mention, I will be leaving in about 8 minutes.
in about 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So the purpose of the first portion of this is to go over our agenda for Tuesday, and to get any questions that we have answered, and that's the discussion part that we always have. So as you can see, board members, we're going to have an executive session Tuesday. You see it, Dr. Hyde?
Yes. Yeah.
So, just so everybody knows, there's gonna be an executive session at 4:30. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, is there any questions for the call to order? Is there any questions about the Pledge of Allegiance? Is there any questions about the moment of silence? Do we have anybody that you know of, Dave, that we should recognize in moment of silence? Connie, Mr. Thomas, Dr. Hyde? Okay. So we're gonna approve 2 sets of minutes. Hopefully you've read them. And then we're gonna move on to approval of the agenda. Are there any questions about that? And then G, budget public hearing. So we've been notified that we're gonna have a budget public hearing. Hi, Chris. We're gonna have a budget public hearing, and that'll be done on that day, okay? Any questions? And I believe there's 2 recognitions and celebrations, Monica, right now?
One recognition,
One?
yeah.
Okay.
With multiple, folks.
Any questions about audience comments? Then there's gonna be a superintendent's report. It's gonna be beyond textbooks end of year report. Any questions for anybody about that?
Yes. Yeah, textbooks. Beyond textbooks. Slide number. Let me count them down. Okay, slide number 6. Say Adams City High School implementing grades 9 through 10th. Shouldn't it be 11th and 12th? Didn't we do freshmen and sophomores? I mean, juniors and seniors? We doing juniors and seniors this year, right? Coming up.
We only implemented with 9th and 10th graders. There has been no discussion about taking it to 11th and 12th. I can check in with the principal if that's an interest that the board has.
Because it said moving forward and continue with BT on the slide, it's saying if we did the freshmen and the sophomores, why is this on here? We got more freshmen implementing the beyond textbooks. We got to give them Chrome computers too. I thought we did all that.
They should be fully equipped over at the high school with Chromebooks for 9th and 10th, and I believe the plan, and I'm not here, so Brandon's not here, but I believe they were going to be have enough for a 1-to-1 even.
Monica, can you pull that slide up, please? Because it's saying moving forward, we got Rose Hill implementing K through 5.
Yep.
Kemp Elementary implementing K through 5. Central implementing K through 5. Hanson implementing K through 5. And I'm looking at Adams City High School implementing grades 9 through 10.
Yep.
So we implementing I thought we already did that this year.
We're continuing with that. Is what that intent is on that slide. I just wanted to that slide.
The year report.
That slide moving forward. Does it have that on the top, Mr.
Yeah.
Thomas?
It's it's on there that we implemented the grades 9 through 10.
Yes.
So 18, 19, we just doing the 6, 8, both middle schools.
Yes, and there's a larger rollout. So Kemp Elementary only had 5th grade. Hanson started the school year with 5th grade, and they started using it more school-wide earlier in the year than we anticipated. Mr. Romero, the principal, wanted more of his teachers using that over at Hanson. Can I borrow that?
Yeah, go ahead, because I'm confused myself now.
Let me help you out.
Yeah, please.
Absolutely. So, can I pull this
Yeah,
back
yeah.
so people can see it? So, this will expand. Camp will expand. It would be K5, this past year, it was only fifth grade.
Right.
Rose Hill will continue with K-5 next year. That's what they did this year. Central will continue K-5. That's what they did this year. Hanson started with fifth grade only, but then wanted more of the training. So we got them logins, and the intent for this next year is a full implementation of K through 5. They are missing a couple of those. They are missing like something called Leadership Retreat, which is something. Sorry.
I think we have to be on.
Okay.
Chairman and walked in the
Which is something that they need to, whoever their new principal may be, they'll want their staff to go through that training. Thank you. And Adams City High School would continue with 9 and 10.
So we didn't do all 9 and 10th graders.
We did have 9th and 10th this year, so they would continue with that
continue.
exact same thing next year. They wouldn't roll 11, 12. I think that's your question, is you're asking why aren't they? I think probably with some of the career and workforce readiness that seniors are required beyond textbooks, I don't think would be really appropriate. I mean, that's my opinion. But we can always talk to the high school and the principal over there and see if there's an interest to go 11th and 12th, if that's something the board wants to explore.
I can't speak for the board, but I would like to ask them and find out, what's going on. So in 18-19 school year, we're only doing those two.
These two will be added to that whole other group.
And then I have a question too.
Yeah.
DuPont is not on there.
No.
Monaco is not on there, and
Also, that whole, yeah.
But if I'm not understanding how come the fifth graders is not getting those Chrome computers, because if they go to the high school the following year, they're gonna be behind because the high school is doing 6th and 8th grade, 6th through 8th grade.
You,
And 3 middle schools is gonna be behind. 3 elementary schools gonna be behind because they're not getting the 5th grade.
that's a good, I don't know if everyone can hear. I'm going to pop back here. You bring up a good question about, and the question, I don't know if everyone could hear that, had to do with our west side of town. We're talking about the Adams City Middle School feeders, Alsup, DuPont, and Monaco, and the Chromebooks may be associated with beyond textbooks and a concern about them potentially being behind if you're feeding in. One thing that beyond textbooks does not necessarily, you do not need a Chromebook to access beyond textbooks. So that's something I do want to let all of you know. A teacher needs it, absolutely, but a student doesn't. You don't have to have a Chromebook to use beyond textbooks. It's a curricular framework. It's got a bundle of resources for a teacher to access. Students can use a Chromebook to take formative assessments, these common formative assessments on their Chromebook, and you have data a little more instantaneous for teaching and reteaching for a teacher.
Okay.
There's been discussion about, including that side of town, but the thing, as you guys saw last week when we were looking at data, I believe from the instructional side, we want to make sure that things are working before we just expand things out. And you could see some inkling of things, some nice positive trend data at the mid-year, but then at the end of the year, I saw a little bit of a drop-off with our Beyond textbooks, and you guys saw that through that data walk last week. So I think there's some reservation about let's not roll here yet. let's get our SPF, let's see how our state data comes through before we do a full expansion. We want to make sure things are working.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other questions? No. Anyone has?
Does anybody else have any other questions for that superintendent's report? No. Thanks, Matt.
Mr. Thomas, really quick, did you want me to check with the high school about grades 11 and 12?
Also, Monaco and.
Go ahead and check. I did, earlier in the year, I will say that I did check in with all of our building principals just to show them that resource, because I wanted to make sure that they knew that that was available to them if they had that interest. The schools from that side of town went to DuPont, I want to say back in November, presented to their instructional team. They chose not to use it right now. Presented to Mr. Abdel and offered to come and present to his instructional team. They decided not to, and did present that as well to Dr. Lechuga over at Monaco. So,
Thank you.
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
So then we'll move to routine items, consent items. This is where the personnel is. If anybody needs to pull anybody from personnel for whatever reason, you can either do it today or you can do it Tuesday. Okay. So then we'll move on to, and if you see, we broke them up in 3 categories. They're certified, classified, and administration. So that way you can pull them out if you want, whatever the case may be. All right? So then we'll move on to the grant. There's a superintendent recommendation approval to accept funds from the ESS School Improvement Grant for Monaco Elementary. And if there's any, do anybody have any questions about that grant? Okay, so 1.2 is superintendent's recommendation approval for acceptance of continuation of grant funds for School to Work Alliance program with Colorado Department of Education and Department of Vocational Rehabilitation. Does anybody have any questions? Who is going to answer the questions if we had some? Is Sheila here, or somebody else is working on it? Oh, there she is. Her hair's different. I didn't recognize you. Sorry.
This one would be Tracy Smith.
This one would be Tracy. Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, is this in, well, I guess this is for the staff, but, is this in, to replace the Inspire? This is, because it looks like it's vocational rehab, well, it's school to work. And, so is that what Inspire used to do? Inspire was mostly to get them ready for college, right?
Probably.
The
I
School
don't
to Work
know.
Alliance program is specific to students with disabilities. So
Oh,
it's students
with-
who have IEPs or 504s.
Okay,
So I don't know if Aspire covered those students or if it covered all students, but this particular grant is specific to kids with disabilities because that's who Division of Voc Rehab works with.
so, and this is a continuation of grant funds, so.
Yes, we've
at
had
the
this grant
same
for the
level,
last 12
Same
years.
level? I mean, is there, plus or minuses that we ought to be aware of, or is this
No, it's
just
not
the
a
same
significant
thing
change.
continuing?
We give them a certain amount of money, they give us twice our money back. And so it's a revenue increaser so that we're able to offer more services to students.
So this is status quo?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Moving on to 2.0, superintendent's recommendation approval for the EARS grant funded contract between Adams 14 School District and Alternatives for Youth I Thrive. Are there any questions on that grant? Okay, let's move on to 2.2, superintendent's recommendation approval to pay off the lease for Siemens equipment 3 years early.
And what is Siemens equipment, please?
Hi, Sean.
How's it going? Mr. Thomas, the Siemens equipment, I believe that's the solar panels and everything, that the district came into a lease agreement years before I was here. So what this is really for, we would save roughly almost $40,000 if we were to pay that off early. However, we wanted to show if we were to keep that money and not pay it off, and we had that in investments, we could see about $11,000 in investments if we keep that money in our reserve. So really the savings would be roughly $27,000 if we were to pay that off early. So we wanted to look at the options and present that to the board to see, just let you know that this is an option. So we put through a recommendation that we could save roughly $27,000 using some of our reserve money to pay this off 3 years early as an option. This would also benefit, if we were moving forward with the BEST grant, we could utilize some of this additional money that's set aside, roughly $300,000 a year that we pay, could go towards some of those COPs for the BEST grant to help pay for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that one? Thanks. 2.3, Superintendent's recommendation approval of contract with Lawan Technology to manage district-wide printers and toner for the 2018-19 school year. Any questions? So I don't have a question, I just have a comment. I looked at it. When we buy toner, all that stuff from wherever it is we buy it, we spend an X amount of money, a ton of money.
Correct.
And this looks like a way, at least in my opinion, what I seen, what I read, was it's a way of saving some cost savings there.
It is. We use $25,000 as a not to exceed. We don't expect that to go over $20,000, but we just wanted to set it at 25 in case we would come near there. Moving forward, our copy machines are actually 10 times cheaper than what it is to use a printer. So the goal of this is to all the printers that we have in the building, once they die out or they're not good anymore, maybe not replacing those, to kind of make the copiers more available for staff to use. Again, I know there's been issues with utilizing those copy machines, and we're trying to meet with Lawan more, have them come out to the schools. I've been in touch with the principals multiple times throughout the year to make sure those copy machines are working correctly. We've replaced a couple of copy machines, and we're having more extensive training at the beginning of the school year to make sure those. So long-term range, this should save a lot more than the $20,000 a year of what we're looking at, because we're going to try and reduce the printers and make those copy machines more available and make sure that those copy machines are working more often.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to 2.4, Superintendent's recommendation approval of contract with American Logistics Company for incidental transportation services for the 2018-19 school year. Any questions about that one?
Good. What does that mean? Incidental specialized transportation. Is this for like field trips for people who can't have access to a standard school bus?
L wanted to apologize. He couldn't be here tonight. But you'll see with a lot of these other requests tonight, this is for students like the Joshua School. So for our buses who can't make it out to some of these areas where we're placing some of our students, this transportation company would help pick those students up and transport them.
Oh, okay, because Adams 14 has like some 40 students that we're not able to serve in district, and so.
We don't have
They're outplaced students.
Happy to go through those numbers.
Well, I mean, it's a couple dozen, or, I mean, these are the students we're talking about for.
We have students placed outside schools that need.
Right, gotcha, okay, these, right, I'm on the, that's fine, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to 2.5, approval of memorandum of understanding between Regis University and Adams 14. I believe this is the one where para to teacher,
This is actually our current teachers to develop their skill sets to meet the needs of the English language learner. So this is through the ELD department. and it's a partnership we're entering with Regis University. They will provide the on-site, meaning ESS, professional development for teachers who pursue this certification. So our goal is that every teacher have CLD certification as part of our turnaround plan. And I believe we're going to begin with 50 teachers. And Tanya's on her way for any additional questions that you may have regarding this.
Toward the bottom of the description here, it says Adams 14, excuse me, it says the last line is the kind of the next to last paragraph, last line. Regis will consider hiring Adams 14 staff with an MAE and a CLDE endorsement as affiliate faculty to teach the courses. So we're paying Regis, who will turn around and hire our staff to teach the courses that we're paying Regis to provide.
Well, that's a growth opportunity. That's actually allowing our teachers to take their skill set and then support other teachers in developing their skill set. Actually, Tanya Lopez currently is a professor part-time. She's our ELD manager at this time. She teaches these courses as well for teachers.
So
it allows those teachers an opportunity here at Adams 14 to become certified, to be able to teach. That's something to be very proud of. Other teachers to become certified in CLD, Culturally Linguistic Diverse Certification.
Money goes for the credits.
the $180,000 goes to Regis so that Regis will give our staff people,
50 teachers.
50 teachers, credits for taking it. Okay, and then as an
Certification.
aside, and as a side deal, they will consider hiring Adams 14 staff to teach some of those courses.
They would have to
And-
reach the master's level, yes.
So-
They would have to continue beyond this to be, to receive a master's in
and that's-
CLD in order to be
Right,
able to
so-
qualify to teach these courses.
So that's just a fringe benefit for some of our staff people to get some experience teaching or to get a few extra bucks
Yes.
from Regis from this grant.
Yes.
So it's kind of a cyclical thing for some of them. Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. You're welcome.
I am a Regis alumni,
Good.
so they always say learners becoming leaders. So I totally like what Regis is doing, so thank you, Regis Rangers.
So let's move on to 2.6, Superintendent's recommendation approval to contract with Team Tipton to conduct a comprehensive community engagement assessment. This is the one that Jesse was talking to us when we were talking about our advisory committees.
He was
don't-
just in here.
Do you want to come back to that one? Because I want to ask, did John look at the contract?
Okay, so we'll come back to that one because Jesse stepped out, so we've got a couple of questions for him. So, so we can't answer this question yet. So 2.7, Superintendent's recommendation approval for allocation funds for a temporary table of authorized personnel increase .27 for the 2018-2019 school year for a student assessment leader for Adams City Middle School. So I think this is taking that .73 person that we have and moving them to a full-time position, correct? For 1 year.
Good evening, everybody. That's correct.
That's right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
What did you just say?
That's correct. So we're working to combine two funding sources. So Adams City Middle School has .73 FTE left in their general fund, and they'd like to match it with their school allocation from title funds at a .27 to make a 1.0 position.
Thank you. 2.8, Superintendent's Recommendation, Contract Be Mindful to provide professional development for teachers and students at Adams City and Kearney Middle Schools and the freshman class at Adams City High School in the area of social and emotional learning, competence, and programming.
That's the program you went to in San Diego, huh?
That was positive behavior supports. So I was working on PBIS, but this is a social emotional program, the mindfulness that we've been doing all year long at the middle schools. And I did bring with me the executive director of Be Mindful, Miss Anne Marie Rossi, to speak to the board on the work we've been doing at the middle schools and talk about the data if the board would like to know more about the program and the work we've been doing.
Please do.
Okay.
I'd like to hear about it.
So we started this year at Adams City Middle School and Kearney Middle School, and I'm going to let Anne-Marie come up and share the data. But we did start this year mindfulness is a Tier 1 PBIS social emotional learning program. We rolled it out this year at both our middle schools as a Tier 1 social emotional learning program for all students, all right? Not special ed students, but all of our students. And so we did that for all the students, and we rolled it out by teaching 8 different courses during our fall semester. And Anne Marie's staff were the licensed mindfulness teachers that came in and taught 1-week classes on subjects that were aligned with our science competencies, our science standards. And then we did 2 minutes of mindfulness before each class began as we started each class for the remainder of the year. And then the team worked with each one of our staff members to work on mindfulness throughout the remainder of the year. We were able to take pre and post assessments, and then we had a researcher at CU Boulder look at the data. And I'm going to have Anne Marie come and talk to you about the findings with both our staff, our students, and what the research told us.
Thank you, Kim. Hello, board. I'm Anne Marie. So we have a number of findings. If you would like, I can bring these up to you. These are copies of the statistical analysis that was completed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So as you can see by taking a look at this, we did both pre and post evaluative measures. The measures that you're looking at currently are the student-specific measurements. So we're looking at things like, are you able to stay focused? And these are self-assessments. How is your sleep, which is really important to learning, right? We know that lack of sleep actually very literally kills your brain cells. So if you're not getting good sleep, it's going to be pretty difficult to learn. We're looking at things like, are you able to handle negative emotions well? What does it look like in your school? Have we seen decreases in bullying? Are you kinder to students? Are the staff kinder to the students? What we saw was statistically significant improvements in all but 2 areas that were measured, which is pretty outstanding considering this is our first year in a rollout with a program that most people don't really understand. Mindfulness is a term that many people don't have a clear understanding of. So to see this type of improvement is really exciting. 80% of the students anonymously self-reported to have benefited from mindfulness class and the desire for it to continue, which is pretty outstanding as well.
Excuse me, what was the reference that you made to a science unit?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought you were because you said these were self-reported, but if there was a science component, classroom
To the
component
class.
in there, I assume that would not be self-reported, but would be an objective assessment, and that you assumed you had a pre and post assessment there as well. Is that true, or am I missing something?
So let me clarify for you.
Okay.
I think that what Kim was talking about was built into our curriculum is neuroscience. In fact, I'm in graduate school right now getting my master's in applied neuroscience. So our program is deeply embedded into neuroscience. So these kids are learning what their neurons are, what their prefrontal cortex is, what their amygdala does, how their bidirectional microbiota gut-brain axis works. They're learning all of these pieces because the way that I would describe this is you can't learn how to drive a vehicle without knowing where your gas and brake is. We're teaching children how their brain works and then exercises to have a healthy brain.
So the science is part of the mindfulness
Exactly.
exercise?
Yes,
Okay, gotcha.
exactly.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so if I'm looking at your list of two that the kids didn't pass was bullying and kindness of students towards others, those was the two, or which,
Those were the two.
those was the two?
Yeah. Now, we are working towards that. I mean, you know, we understand that we're always learning to look to learn and grow, and this was our first year here. We've brought in some additional staff members to help us to support the growth and development of the program. We also have, and this is a continuation from last year, we've brought in individuals who are Spanish-speaking, native Spanish-speaking teachers to help us to construct programs that we hope will maybe gather a little more support around the notion of things like random acts of kindness.
Thank you. I'm good.
Good, good, Dr. Hyde.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I have a question. Not if I can ask you.
Me?
Yes, please. When I'm looking at the bullying, are we working with HR to find out where's the correlation? Because if I ain't mistaken, Thursday we had something to do with bullying at one of those stations we went to. So I'm trying to figure out how, if we got the mindset working, and then you're doing the 6th through 8th grade and you're doing freshmen, where somewhere we missing, because if bullying is something that's wrong in our district, where should we as a district, with your personal opinion, try to elevate or look into to try to find out where is that at? How do we go about that as a district with this bullying?
So Anne Maria and I have been working on this collectively with, and it started the conversation with Ruben Chacon. And what we're talking about is really the climate and culture in our schools.
Okay.
And talking about that with the climate and culture with our staff and working with our kids. So the conversation really is about trauma-informed and responsive classrooms, and really talking about relationships with our kids and how we're interacting with our kids, adults to kids, and forming relationships with children. So I know that sounds very simplistic, and I know that that sounds a simple answer to a very complex issue. We're also talking about that in relationship to our efforts around positive behavior supports and the work that Ms. Burgos is doing with the PBIS and the work that I did with the CDE work with PBIS. So we have 3 PBIS schools that spent a year with Colorado Department of Education, and that was Kearney Middle School, Hanson Elementary School, and Adams City High School. We have also sent 2 people away to be Swiss trained, to be data driven, to really monitor and look at our data around behavior. So we have some things in progress. We need more systems to look at our behavior and analyze what is really going on with our schools with student behavior.
Could you get the Board of Education a list of that behaviors, that list you was just talking about?
I think one of the most important things that was brought to the board was by your DAC committee, and that was your multi-tiered systems of support and your PBIS board policy that was brought to you.
Right.
And I think that that was a really important piece of work that I saw brought by DAC in your community. I think that was something that I haven't seen in any public education put forth, and that was pretty progressive.
Right, okay.
But I'll be happy to put together a list for the board of all the initiatives going on around behavior for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
You know, it's my understanding that bullying is a very generationally tied behavior. And what does the literature say about the optimal point of intervention? I mean, you know, here we are, this is at Kearney, but you had mentioned the high school, elementary school, and so forth. But, you know, as a district that's trying to deal with this, is there an optimal age or grade level at which we perhaps ought to give special focus or special focus more resources on in terms of addressing bullying?
Yes, I think that some of the most recent research is really talking about early intervention and prevention and to really back off from bullying. So the most, what we did in the early stages of bullying is we came out and really targeted the bullies. Okay, we came out and started talking about bullies, and we did a lot more damage than we did helpfulness. So I think.
Excuse me, what age of boys are we talking about in this case?
So if you have some elementary kids and you have some behaviors going on, and one of those kids is demonstrating some bully behavior, and you pull those kids aside and you say, you know, Dr. Hyde, you're the bully here, and you're doing bullying behavior. You've now labeled this child, and you've given him a label, and you've now, you know, starting to apply some labels and terminology. There may be moments as a kid's developmental stage where they may have some bullying type behaviors. We can turn those things around in elementary. We call them some leadership skills, some strong leadership skills. Some of our psychologists in elementary schools are having a boys' leadership group and bringing some of those strong personalities together and channeling that energy into more productive uses. When we see some of those behaviors starting to pop up, instead of labeling them in those manners and redirecting those behaviors, we also know that some of this bullying on social media can get ahead of us a lot faster than we can punish others for. So if you look at social media and the clicks on Facebook, I can throw out a negative comment on social media about my friend, and it can gather a lot more clicks a lot faster than any kind of coming back at the perpetrator of that. So we have to really use kids and channel kids, especially at the high school level, secondary level, to create a culture of positivity, a culture of we don't accept this. And that's what we're doing through our PBIS efforts at Adams City High School and letting the kids set the climate and culture for their school. This is what it's like to be an Eagle. This is what it means to be an Eagle. This is how we act at our school, and we're not going to tolerate this. And letting those kids set the tone.
Okay, so how does the responsive classroom philosophy support curbing bullying, and also in terms of restorative justice? Do you see those as dovetailing with your approach to dealing with bullying?
I think that the responsive classroom is going to ask you more about, instead of what's wrong with you, it's going to ask you what's happened to you, instead of what's wrong with you, why are you behaving like that, what's wrong with you, what's happened to you. And the restorative justice, I think, can better respond to that would be Ruben Chacon. I'm not a restorative justice person. But restorative justice is something that occurs after the fact.
Right, right.
Trauma-informed or responsive classroom is creating a culture and climate which is responsive to the needs of the kids as they appear to you in that moment.
Well, because my understanding is with responsive classroom, that's, you know, each day starts fresh with certain exercises or so forth, mental exercise to get you in the right frame of mind so that you try to start to learn what it is, what are your responsibilities as a student and so forth, and what's your purpose in being in school. And so to me, it's a very progressive or looking ahead progressive, trying to set the student up with a positive attitude for the day as opposed to being reactive.
Correct.
That's my experience with the progressive, with the responsive classroom.
And I think also looking at whole child, and so how we respond to the child as the whole person, not just the learner, but, I think we're doing a lot of positive things in Adams 14 with our on-site health care, with community reach therapists, school-based therapists in all our schools. We have a lot of great wraparound services, so we're well on our way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So let's move on to 2.9. Superintendent's recommendation, contract with the Shiloh House to provide educational and therapeutic interventions for students with significant emotional disabilities. Any questions? Let's move on to 2.10, Superintendent's recommendation, initiating a contract with Spectra Autism Center to provide educational and therapeutic interventions for students with autism for the 2018-19 school year. Any questions?
Again, are these kind of continuation programs? Or are these new programs?
So I work with the placement of all of our students who have special needs that need an out-of-district placement, whose needs that we can't meet here in district. So most of the contracts that you're going to see coming forth today are continuations. Spectra, however, is a new one. We are hoping to replace the Joshua School with Spectra for two reasons. One, it's much more financially sound for us to do so. They cost about half as much as Joshua School does to educate kids with severe autism. But even more importantly, they're in Adams County. So as these kids turn 18 to 21 and start to need adult services, if we have them at a center that's already in our county, it's easier to connect them with those adult services that they need later in life.
Thanks.
But the rest of them are all continuations.
Okay, because there's a whole bunch of them here.
Yes, there are.
I have a question. I heard you said it's half price, and that kind of ticks me off a little bit because by he's telling us it's half price. To me, it's like we're giving our students half price of the education they should get because it's in Adams County, but you haven't said nothing. What's the difference between the Spectrum and the one we just used, but price? Is the quality better our students might get, or?
The quality is actually exactly the same. They're both service providers for what is called applied behavior analysis, which is what students with autism, with very severe autism need. For some reason, Joshua School has always been a lot more costly than all of our other facility schools. And I think for a long time that's because they were the only one in the state providing that service. Now Spectra's the only other one. There's two in all of this, in the whole state of Colorado offering this service to students.
And how long has Spectrum been up?
They've been running for, probably 20 years, but they've only been in Adams County for about 8. They were down in South Denver before, which made them not a very reasonable option for us up to this point.
And what other type of services will they be giving our students besides this little paragraph I'm reading?
Which paragraph are you reading?
I think you got it in front of you. I'm trying to figure out what other service they're going to be giving our students.
Oh, thank you. So what they provide is applied behavior analysis. It's also generally a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 adults to 1 student, because of the severity of some of the behaviors that the students that they serve have. And so what they do is they teach replacement behaviors. If a kid is hitting all the time, they teach him to say, help please, or to request what they need, rather than beating up on the adults that are trying to work with them.
And how many students in the district do we have with autism, please?
Overall with autism, or with this level of severity of autism?
This level right here, please.
Currently, we have 3 students who are placed out of district. 2 of them age out of special education services June 6th. They turn 21 and are moving into adult services. The third ages out in December. He turns 21. We had 1 kid move in from Jeffco who we need to place, and then we have a student who has been in our district who is most likely going to need an out-of-district placement due to the severity of his autism. Those are the 2 we're looking at placing at Spectra.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Let's move on to 2.11, Superintendent's Recommendation, Contract with Laridan School to provide educational and therapeutic interventions for students with significant emotional and cognitive disabilities. Any questions?
Again, is this one of the continuation ones?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Good, Harvest?
Yes, thank
Connie?
you.
Yep.
Moving on to 2.12, Superintendent's Recommendation, Contract with the Joshua School to provide educational and therapeutic interventions for students with autism for the 2018-19 school year.
Can you please help me define the difference between the first one with Spectrum and these students here, please? Because now we're using Joshua for the kids with autism, and then you're using Spectrum for kids, I believe you said, with a different severe autism.
Correct. They both have severe autism. The Joshua School contract is only for the fall semester for our 1 remaining student who has been there for the last 6 years, I believe, who ages out of special education in December. So it's just for first semester for him.
Oh, so so the change would be probably difficult for him.
Correct.
Okay, I understand.
Okay?
Yeah.
2.13, Superintendent's Recommendation, Contract with the Jefferson Hills to provide educational and therapeutic interventions for students with significant emotional disabilities for the 2018-19 school year. Any questions?
This is, again, continuation, Jefferson Hills.
Moving on to 2.14, Superintendent's Recommendation, Contract with the, I'm gonna mess this up. Devereaux Cleo Wallace Center to provide educational and therapeutic interventions for students with significant emotional disabilities for the 2018-19 school year.
And excuse me, exactly what would they be doing here?
This is a day treatment facility that provides specific behavioral supports and therapeutic services. So these are children who need to be followed by psychologists and psychiatrists day in and day out to be able to function in an educational environment.
So, okay. Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay?
I just want to clarify, too, for the board, that a lot of these placements are placed by the courts and that we don't have control over those. So a lot of the placements we have, we get notification by the courts, and all we do are we pay the bill. So we make these contracts with approved facilities at the beginning of the year because we know what facilities are approved and which ones that the courts have placed children that live within our county that we're responsible for payment, and we have these contracts set up because we know that more likely than not we will have students placed by the courts there that we will end up paying for.
Thank you. Moving on to 2.15, Superintendent's Recommendation, initiating a contract with Adams 12 School District to provide educational services for students who are deaf or hard of hearing. Any questions?
None.
No.
Moving on to 2.16, Superintendent's Recommendation, contract with the Rocky Mountain School for the Deaf Charter School to provide educational services for students who are deaf or hard of hearing for the 2018-19 school year. Did I just do that one? Okay, sorry.
There are 2 of them there.
No, are there 2 different
No,
ones?
they're 2 different ones.
They're 2 different ones.
Yeah.
So are there any questions? Okay, moving on to 2.17, Superintendent's Recommendation, ATX Learning Contract for Bilingual Speech Language Pathologist for the 2018-19 school year.
What's ATX?
ATX is the name of a contract company.
Okay.
What were you saying? Oh. Are you good, Dr. Hyde?
Yes, thank you.
Moving on to 2.18, Superintendent's Recommendation, Contract with Community Reach Center to place school-based therapists in all schools in Adams 14 for the 2018-19 school year. Any questions? Okay, moving on to 2.19, Superintendent's Recommendation, Contract with the Consortium for Technical Support with Medicaid Billing for the 2018-19 school year. Sorry, there's a typo in my Any questions? Moving on to 2.20, Superintendent's Recommendation, Approval of Contract with Kids First to provide the Adams 14 community with outreach and Medicaid enrollment for the 2018-19 school year. Any questions? Moving on to 2.21, Superintendent's Recommendation, Approval of Kids First Nursing Services Agreement for 2018-19 school year.
Did they reimburse the district that money John oversaw, that contract?
I know Eddie was working on that. I think between Eddie and John, they found a certain dollar amount. They were going back to Kids First to try and get reimbursed. I don't think we've received that dollar amount back yet, but I know we've sent emails to them and we're trying to finalize them, reimbursing them.
And then the vendors I asked you about on page 103 is supplemental healthcare staffing. It's been open since September 15, 2017, $103,000. For staffing, I'm trying to figure out, why do they need a staffing agency if we got a contract in front of us for this type of, it keeps going up. And I'm trying to figure out, this $486,000, I think it went up almost $15,000 from last year almost. But they got a staffing agency. And I'm trying to figure out why is it still open. It's right here.
I see it.
What was the name of that vendor?
It's on page 103, which you gave me today.
What I sent to you?
Page 103, and it's supplemental health care staffing agency. So if they're using the staffing agency, also they sending us a contract. And also if John went and found funds that they should be reimbursing the district, and then they come in with a contract. I'm not understanding why is that. If we haven't got the insurance, the money to pay back our district.
Right.
So
I'll look into that supplemental staffing agency. When I was first speaking of this to the finance team, they didn't think that we had utilized them.
yeah, they utilized 27,000.
So, yep. So we'll get some information on there and
Yeah,
try to
but-
get it back to you before the board meeting on Tuesday.
Right, because if they're using a staffing agency and we signing contracts with them, I would like for also too to bring the contract of this 103,000 to the Board of Education. I'd like to see that contract.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you.
Yes.
I may have some information that I can help as well with Mr. Thomas's question, if you like.
Sure.
I did talk with Eddie after my initial review of the invoices that were in question. Those were sent over to Ms. Portney with Kids First. She looked at them and then she responded, and she had explanations for all of the issues. And I looked at that and gave my advice as to her responses back to staff. And I don't know where they ended up with that. What I can tell you is that, without getting too specific for you, some of the smaller amounts that were in question, I still think were not encompassed within the agreement that was in effect, but they were very small amounts of money. There was another one that was more significant, and it had to do with whether the district would reimburse Kids First enrollment fees for individuals who would use their services, medical services. And, you know, I know that one resolution is that Kids First improved the agreements. So there shouldn't be these types of disputes in the future. And I have looked at the draft agreement that they submitted. So I think it's more clear about these types of issues. But whether or not that one particular, the more significant amount, it's a 4-figure amount, whether that should be reimbursed or not, you know, that's something I'd be happy to discuss with the board in executive session in more detail, but I don't know how that was resolved.
And also, too, can you, Mr. Milner, check and see Mapleton and see how they using their nurses, or how, because they closer to student population than us. And I'm trying to see what's the difference of 486,000, and it keeps going up. And I understand inflation 2 to 7% each year, but I'm trying to figure out this 100,000 that's separate from a contract. So can you look at Mapleton, because I think they got like 8,500 students. How do they service their kids? See how that works. Thank you.
Don't we share part of our nursing over that way?
I'd have to look into that.
No?
And to go back to what John was saying, that $4,000 was the one that we were kind of not sure of and going back and forth with Kids First. The smaller amounts we did agree to, that they would reimburse us on the smaller amount ones, but the $4,000 was one that was in question still, and we're still conversating about that with Kids First.
So they're increasing the nurses is one FTE. Is that because they lost one, or they just have a need for another one?
Do you know?
And they just increased it last year.
That's what
right?
I'm wondering.
Yeah, they just increased it last year.
I'll have to email you with the answer.
Does she work for them?
FTE.
Kids First?
No, she
That's what I thought.
no, she took Alan's spot. She next one under Alan. Alan, they left.
Oh, okay, so she's not really part of Kids First, yeah.
That's student services.
Right,
so
right.
She's next under him.
Yeah, but she's not part of Kids First.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, we good?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Move on to 2.22, Superintendent's Recommendation, increase the contract amount with Caitlin Lombardi, DBA Learning Channels LLC, teacher of the visually impaired and orientation and mobility specialist, to provide services for students with a visual disability for the remainder of the 2018-19 school year.
Are these students legally blind? They're all legally blind? Thanks.
Any other questions? Moving on to 2.23, Superintendent's Recommendation, approval to contract with Susan Resnick Consulting LLC for continued mathematics support.
Ms. Resnick, can I speak to you, please? I just want to say thank you Thursday for that presentation and that going around the different sites, looking at those numbers. you opened up my eyes to see a lot of things that has been missing in this district as far as the reading and math, and I really, truly appreciate that.
Thank you.
What you done just in the amount of time that I met you for that. I think it was an hour, a couple of hours. But thank you so much for what you do for this district.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
On the math programs that are mentioned here, do we have any, I'm probably asking you a question you don't have an answer to, because, you know, just last week, we wanted to come up with a curriculum, okay? The district said we want to have a K-12 curriculum. And the first question that came to my mind is whether, you know, the Math in Focus or the Singapore math and so forth, how likely is that going to be incorporated into, you know, the overall K-12 math curriculum that's being developed? I mean,
So I can answer that. So right now, we're using Math and Focus in K-5. So it's being used in K-5 in the district. 6-12 does not have math textbooks right now, but they do have curriculum maps that they're using from BT in some instances and in some in ones that they created themselves. So I don't know exactly what the interest in the middle school and high school is to using a textbook to supplement the curriculum maps they have. But right now the teachers are creating their own units based on the maps that they created. We just finished actually 3 days of working with the middle school on curriculum mapping and looking at assessments and the standards at the middle school level and understanding what kids need to be able to do and learn. We just finished that work today, actually, with the middle schools.
I may have asked you this question before, but I'd like to raise it publicly, and that is, a lot of us grew up went to school with textbooks, and we've really, in many cases, gotten away from them. And here you refer to curriculum maps, the teachers coming up with their own programs. And, you know, I know Colorado has its standards, but probably many states or all states have standards, and there's got to be an enormous amount of commonality among those state standards. And it seems to me when we're talking about trying to develop a K-12 curriculum, I actually remember when textbooks, in terms of the curriculum, it said, yeah, we use the Mifflin or whatever it is, such and such, you know, higher limits math series. And that statement was essentially the only thing that had to go into the descriptor in terms of defining what the math curriculum is or was. And we've clearly moved away from it. There must have been a reason, but I wonder whether we gave up something that was of real value when we kind of moved away from these textbooks. You know, are they not responsive to the
so Math and Focus
standards?
actually is a textbook series, and it actually goes through 8th grade. The district has only adopted it through 5th grade. So I would say Math and Focus right now is directing what they should teach and also how they should teach it and what materials they should use. And you guys invested in that last year, so that investment's been made. So in K-5, I think it's a little bit tighter right now. Beyond textbook, we'll then provide the curriculum frameworks for the middle school if it gets added to the middle school, and it's already doing that for 9-10 for math. And so that philosophy is a little bit different. It's that the calendars tell them what to teach, and then it's linked to online resources that teachers can use to support the standards that are in their online bank, but it is not a textbook program by any means. So we do not currently have a textbook from 6th grade to 12th grade. And there is a process the district can go through to do textbook adoption for 6th through 12th, if that's something that people are interested in doing. But I actually have only been working with the elementary. This week was the first time I'd worked with middle school, so I'm just understanding kind of.
So
I was never under a contract to work with.
Yeah, so
high school.
I think I hear you're saying that by not sticking to a textbook and using these other instruments, tools, you enrich the scope and diversity of the context for the substantive material that you're teaching. Is that right?
If you're asking my professional opinion, I would probably say something different than what you're saying, but, because I honestly believe that in a district where we have a lot of new teachers who may not have the expertise, especially in elementary, or mathematical knowledge to make those choices, that's an interesting.
So wouldn't a
go.
textbook be?
So a textbook provides that for them, which is one of the reasons
Is
that I think
a
the
stronger
district.
crutch for a new teacher.
I'll let Ari talk about that because she was part of why we adopted, but.
Well, we didn't, actually, we rebooted. And
Rebooted,
so,
yeah.
so when I came in, that was one of the charges I was given, and that's to look at our actual achievement, student achievement, and student growth. And so I began, you don't just come in and make changes, you begin to ask questions. So what I learned at the elementary level was that every school used whatever they wanted. So we had schools using this program, other schools using that program. Well, if you do all the literature regarding how to turn a low-performing school around, you have to be very explicit and systematic in what you do. So I was a little surprised that we weren't using Math in Focus because we actually purchased these materials or adopted it 2009. But, you know, as leadership changes and there's no clear direction, so I said, you know what, we can't have this, so I consulted with Susan and other individuals that are professionals in the area and said, we need to have something solid. Teachers cannot come in and just choose and pick whatever they want. We really need to have a systematic way of teaching them. So we rebooted. We didn't adopt, it had already been adopted, Math in Focus, making sure that we had the teacher's manuals, student books, student consumables, you board approved that, and manipulatives. Benchmark had already been adopted the year before. The 16-17 school year was the first year that was implemented. That had been adopted in the spring of 16. Benchmark is our English language arts program. Adelante is the Spanish version of that at the elementary level. This school year, you also allowed us to go into the reserves for $1 million and look at possibly adopting math resources at the high school. I don't know where we're at with that. I believe they were going to present something in June, but I don't think that happened, so we definitely have that. Looking forward, they do want textbooks at the high school, and they want textbooks at the middle school.
And they talked to me last week about what aligns with Singapore Math the best, so that, because I think you guys were there when I said to them, we need to look for a K-12 build here. We need to make sure that we're not like saying, oh, you're in this for K-5, and then you switch over to this thing, and then you switch over to this thing. We want to make sure that we have a vertical view on that.
So that's was Mr. Rowland mine, and I think Mr. Thomas concerned about not having textbooks for several years now. So it would be beneficial for us to get books for 6th through 12th in math. Okay.
In math
That's
and
all I
and
need to
English.
know.
The two,
I personally think so, yes.
and science, because these are the three areas, language arts, math, and science, that we are held accountable to in student growth and achievement as measured by state assessments and the pre-SAT and the SAT.
So who would, do you have your committee to look at what kind of books there are for math and science and what the cost would be to provide for 6th through 12th grade?
We're certainly,
Because I think we need it.
Yes, yes. So we did not, I don't think I'm going to own it, do an excellent job at sharing that. You have board approved that $1 million, I think it was $1,200,000 for resources. I know they did begin the work at the high school, and they were looking specifically at mathematics adoption this for the incoming school year. All I know is that we have to, and they did do a committee, and they also put it out to parents, but we need to have everything delivered by the 30th, and I think of June,
Right.
received, inventoried,
Right.
and delivered.
Right.
Yeah, by June 30th, and I think that's a deadline we did not meet, so we're certainly going to hit the ground running for the school 18-19 school year.
I'm talking about for the 18-19 school year.
Yeah, we'll do whatever we didn't do correctly this year, to adopt for the 19-20 school year.
Oh, for the 19-20.
Yeah, we would have to do the work in 18-19
So
that we did
even
not
if you-
complete
even
this
if you
school year,
ordered
and I'm not
something-
sure.
I know we used to do that. It was called the Instruction Materials Center. They used to order all the textbooks. And even though some of them came in a little late, we still got them.
I think there's correct me
There
if
is a
I'm wrong,
deadline.
I think there's a board adoption policy that requires a public review. And I think that's the part that hasn't happened, that they have to be on display for, I don't know,
30
most
days, I
districts is
believe.
30 days, and the public
Yeah.
has to be able to review them.
So-
Still better than
I
not
mean,
getting them.
for sure you could,
Yeah, so definitely that is something that, the
Start
work
that process.
began, it wasn't done, as it should have been, to have everything delivered by the 30th. So incoming school year, we know that, and we begin the process early enough that we meet all the guidelines set forth by our school board as stated by the CDE.
I just wanted to comment that the board did approve $1.2 million for this. There was under $200,000 that was spent. So that $1 million is rolling over into the next year's budget, and it is set aside for curriculum, if it's math textbooks or whatever resources available. But that $1 million is still in the budget for next year for those same
It just would
resources.
have really been nice to have proactive to get that going, and we could have had them ordered and delivered by, because to wait, it's another whole year, that puts the kids that much more behind.
Yes, and that's where we're working harder and smarter, I should say smarter, to make sure that we communicate more efficiently and effectively so that we don't have those breakdowns. Excuse me?
Okay, good?
I'm great.
Okay, thank you. So
Thank-
move.
Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to 2.24, Superintendent's recommendation, approval for in-state overnight travel to Breckenridge, Colorado for the Colorado Association for Career and Technical Education on July the 17th through the 19th, 2018.
Mr. Duran from Adams City High School, how you doing?
Well, sir, how are you?
I'm blessed. I can't complain.
It's good.
I'm looking at the staff. Mr. Castillo, what does he do for,
He's our instructor for our machine tool or advanced manufacturing program.
and how many students did he have in his class for last year?
This last year, I would say approximately about 120 students for the whole year.
For the
So-
whole, how many?
Well, there's about 20 students. He has 6 sections, so about 240 students, essentially for the whole year. There's about 120 students per semester.
And Mr. Cerner, what did that person teach?
Auto collision.
Auto collision, and how many individual students did they have?
I would say roughly around the same, around between 200 to 240 for the year.
And I don't want to butcher Jessica name,
DeLulo.
DeLulo. And what did she teach?
She teaches our baking and pastry.
And did the students go to the, was it a contest they normally go to?
Yeah, so they attended the FCCLA, which is the it's a conference or competition for students that are going into culinary arts. That's put on an annual basis through the National Restaurant Association. Our students, however, did not place at the competition, but we're working in ways to see how we can have more in-house competitions to get our students more prepped for those statewide competitions.
Yeah, because the class last year, I think they placed third or second or first, something like that. Not this class, but the last year class, they did pretty well, if I'm not mistaken.
For the culinary arts program?
Correct, because I believe City Councilman Crystal Elliott was helping with them baking and everything. So I do remember that.
Absolutely.
And what about Hallman?
Human. She works in collaboration with the culinary arts program as well. So her program is more focused on the culinary arts side. So we have baking and pastry and then culinary arts. Culinary arts is really the aspect of running a restaurant, understanding how to prepare larger meals for a buffet style programming. So they're looking at how they not only just do one side of culinary arts, but looking at how do we expand that to serve a larger population of people.
So, the culinary arts, do these two ladies cook for the district, or do they open up the cafeteria, that room over there? Is that open for staff to go there? Anybody can go there and have lunch?
Currently, not right now. And we're exploring the option. I think previously it used to be open and it was ran like a restaurant. You know, we had obtained a sales license through the city of Commerce City, and we're looking at how do we build a schedule that will permit, you know, for us to open up for business. So right now, this school year, I was sitting behind the scenes and doing a lot of observation to see kind of what's going on and what has been going on historically in the building in terms of CTE, which allows me to kind of then take, you know, those observations and say, now how do we take what we've learned this year and start building on some type of programming? So one of the things that we're looking at is double booking our upper level or advanced classes, which is our Pro Start students. So culinary arts is a 2-year program. The second year of the program, which is Pro Start, is a partnership with Metro State University, where students that complete the year, both semesters, are eligible to obtain 6 credit hours of coursework or credits towards a bachelor's degree. So what I'm looking at is taking that group of students and double blocking them so they're in the class for 2 class periods, which will allow for them to have an extended period or an extended class period, which would then open the option of saying, how can we keep these students in the classroom so we can open up a restaurant and have lunch, maybe not every day, but looking at possibly a couple days a week to emphasize the importance of running a restaurant out of there, because I think that's the intent behind it, is building it like an actual restaurant where people can come in and have lunch. I think the thing that we have to be cognizant of is, you know, with title funding, we can't be selling food to students at the same time as our students are in school. So we can't compete with the school lunch system. So I think that's kind of the red tape that I have to work through to figure out how do we make sure that we're allowing, you know, participants to come into patrons to come into the building, without violating that law of, because we have nutrition services getting funding for our students to get lunch, we can't violate that.
And what about Moss?
So Mr. Moss is our carpentry teacher. I would say in terms of the number of students he served, it's a little bit less. I think it's a growing program. I think that, you know, if you've seen historically, we've had carpentry off and on. We've been trying to get it up and running. We were able to submit a program approval to get it approved by the community college systems. So now it's an approved program that we can fund under Perkins this year. So I worked with the team to get that up and running. So now we have an established carpentry program. And really, I'm looking at changing the name of it to not just encompass carpentry, but looking at construction technology. So that way we're encompassing more of the trades that go with carpentry. So how do we teach students not only about the infrastructure, but looking at framing, looking at electrical running, those kind of pieces that come with construction. Because we have a beautiful facility to be able to enhance that. I think it's important to think about how can we create an opportunity for our students to see how might they be able to leverage some of the skills that they're going to learn in construction technology.
Because I ask these questions because for me to sit on this dais, I get so frustrated when I see the surrounding Adams County schools, CTE programs get so much publicity and so much this and that. And I'm looking at our high school and we got all the amenities that can do this stuff. And it's not towards you, because I know you just walked in the road, but I'm just trying to figure out what are we not doing up here to make you successful and our students successful? Because I think it's supposed to be more that we can do to make that CTE programs. I don't think we're funding it totally. I don't think it's getting adequate
resources,
communication out there. I think some young ladies like to fix trucks and cars, and you know, don't tell nobody. I like to cook too, can't you? I like to cook, but I think, you know, the roles have changed drastically. That it's just not women supposed to do this. See, Ms. Q.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I think, one of the things that we are looking to address within our CT program, and that the state asks us to address, is the non-traditional tracks, right? So we're looking at how do we get more women in construction? How do we get more women into advanced manufacturing or into auto collision? Because we can tell based on, what the workforce tells us in terms of statistics, women are underrepresented in those particular workforce areas. So one of the things that we're working on is for this upcoming year, and the plan that I have for our upcoming year is all of our trades, so our auto collision, advanced manufacturing, construction technology, or carpentry, we're reopening our chapter, which is the Skills USA. So Skills USA is an really nationwide competition for students to be able to compete with other students around the state of Colorado. And the hope is that we were going to get more individuals from the industry that represent, whether it be carpentry, whether that be auto collision, but really looking at women in those trades, so that way we can enhance the number of female students going into those career paths as well. To answer your other question about, you said, exposure and excitement around these CT programs, I think one of the things that I'm also working on is setting up a green room for our multimedia program, and really having our multimedia program do daily or weekly newscasts about what's going on in the building. But I think it's also an opportunity for kids to cover the positive things that are going on in CTE. I think to really highlight the positive activities going on amongst that program, to put that out there.
Just Miss Burke, you don't have to get up. I know you just been. Is there any grants or funding we can do for the CTE? I mean, are we looking at grants to help them?
Yeah, there is. So right now, the Perkins grant is federally funded.
Uh-huh.
There's additional supplementary ones based off of the programs and choices of courses that we offer. So they're not as large as the Perkins grant that we currently have.
And the Perkins grant really is designed, I think, it's there to be more of a supplement to help modernize what you're doing in your programs. So this year, one of the programs, the advanced manufacturing program, we purchased a laser engraver. So next year, my goal is to work with the machining students to partner with clubs and to partner with other programs in the school to take some of their activities or some of the fundraising activities they want to do, where the advanced manufacturing kids will be able to take raw material, build something for those kids in those clubs, and then they can go sell it as a fundraiser and then kick back some money back to the machine program. Really kind of, I think, replicating what might it look like in the workforce, where they take raw material and then make an end product and then sell it at the end of the day. So that's what we're trying to do now with our advanced manufacturing. This upcoming year as well, we wrote a iron rod worker where students can bring back welding, because we once had welding at the old school and we're not doing that anymore. So that was a charge that I gave both our auto collision and advanced manufacturing teacher to say, how can we partner together between the two of you to offer welding again? Because once again, it's a skill that people are making solid money coming right out of high school if they have the certificates to be able to go do that type of work.
Yeah, and it hurts, because I know, the board knows that my wife was over the CNA program. She come in and make sure all the paperwork was done, and now it's gone, and I don't understand that.
Yeah, I think the challenge is, I think earlier you alluded to, resources, and I think one of the challenges that we have is, we have up and running programs, right, our 6 different pathways, and we once had, an established CNA program. I think the direction we have to figure out is, one, allocating resources to an FTE for a healthcare teacher, which is an expensive cost, because if we want to bring in someone to be able to train high school students to be able to enter the workforce, essentially you need to have a registered nurse teacher coming in, or someone with a bachelor's of science in nursing to come in and teach those programs. So absolutely, I think the opportunity is there, as long as we can find those resources to
Well, don't
to
tell
get there.
nobody she'll get mad she's a nurse practitioner, but I just feel that we are short-sighting our students, and you over the program, and I think this board will try every possible way to make sure that we can get things for our students. You know, I don't think we're going to short side or shortcut anything for our students. And once again, I always say our students is the most important thing that we are up here for. And we can do this. And if things that you need, you see, I'm the type of person, I don't like the red tape, but I have to, you know, and they could tell you I hate it. But I feel that if it's things that if you're running that department, you should be coming to the board to say, I need X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z. You know, if we don't know about it, then you got to plan, well, I'm going to get this for next year, then I'm going to wait to get this 2 more years. I don't think that's the right way to go. I think it's our job to find a way to let the superintendent know if this was going to help our CTE grow, we can do this. We can do this.
Great.
I got to go.
Thank you. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Board members, we are, is that me?
No.
Make it really brief. But we are partners with Adams Consortium Education. We're also partners with the Adams County Youth Initiative through Becky Hoffman, and that's Chuck Gross. And they are really extending their arms to help us and assist us. That's how we actually got the program, and you can talk more about the program at the high school with the banking, where now our students will be doing internships at the bank, so they can become bank managers in the future. So know that we are extending our options to support our children. So we're done.
Yeah, absolutely. So this school year, actually, we piloted a program where we partnered with the Adams County Education Consortium and the and community college system to develop digital badges. And the intent behind the digital badges were to be able to essentially give students these badges, if you will, to be able to demonstrate, you know, their competencies in banking. So we had, I believe we had 28 students qualify for digital badges at the end of this school year, and we're just in year 1. So we want to continue to grow this program as we build out high school business as well.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, Mr. Duran, we're out of time, but I wanted to pick up on Mr. Thomas's first comment, and at some time maybe we can just talk personally. But trying to develop more outreach things. The example that was mentioned was selling, putting on the
fundraising
cuisine, you know,
the restaurant.
The restaurant or something like that. And whether the same type of things could be done with the autos and the carpentry and so forth. And we can have that just for exchange of information, but I don't want to take the time tonight to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we've happened to have lost all of our board members, so.
Subtle hint, right?
I think everybody went to the restroom, so why don't we take a few minutes and go to the restroom if we need or whatever. I think we have one more that, Jesse, we'd like to ask you. Harvest is gone. He had some questions for you. Jesse, are you listening to me? Yeah. Okay. So Harvest is, that's okay, Harvest is gone, so I'm going to have him put the questions that he had for you in writing, and we'll get them to you, and see if we can't get them answered by Tuesday. That's fine. Okay, thanks.
Can you ask him before he leaves?
Harvest, did you want to ask Jesse before you leave?
He's right here.
Or do you want to put them in writing and give them to him by Tuesday, or what do you want to do?
No, I just didn't see. I only seen it.
Sorry, Connie.
Just 2 quick questions.
Yeah.
Did John look over the?
Is your mic on?
I'm sorry. Thank you. Did John look over the contract?
So I haven't done a contract yet because we want to ensure that we do get approval to actually do a contract, and then we'll do an independent contract with a scope of work. What I would kind of like, and what I'm considering is wanting to get, because I feel like this is some hardy work that I would love, like I mentioned before, board buy-in. So I think like wanting to show the scope of work for you guys and get your input on what you would like to see as far as the scope of work as well.
And then also, it had to be determined phase 2.
So, yeah, phase 2, the first part would be paid out of kind of our MTSS and also our turnaround implementation grant. The phase 2, which is the execution and the follow-up, that is something that I feel like we didn't want to give the whole big picture. We want to see the state of, as a consultant, what they could deliver to us. And then if we feel like if it's a solid design plan, because they really design the future, then we would come back to the board to ask for the second phase as well. And a dollar amount to that. I didn't just want to give you a sticker shock or anything like that.
All right. I'm cool.
Okay.
That's all you needed?
Yeah, that's it.
And I'll probably just be emailing you guys to see like your thoughts as stakeholders that you would want to engage with, because I feel like this needs to be a two-way conversation between board and district around who stakeholders to assess and do these interviews with and these focus groups. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have any preconceived notions as to your expectations for their work?
Preconceived expectations.
What are your expectations? You know, if we were to
Well, I
engage
think-
them, what would you expect?
Yeah, I
to
think
be an
what
outcome
we're really
from that
trying to do is, I
exercise?
think if we're really trying to move in a collective impact way, the same direction as a district, we really need to listen to our stakeholders. That's City Council, CTA, our parent community. I think right now, the climate and culture, as we can feel in the district, is a little disconnected between community and the district. We need to know the underlining of that if we're really trying to look at collective direction and the direction we want to go as a district. I think the underlining thing that we have is our culture is a little somewhat disconnected. In my opinion, it's a little toxic. And so we really need to really figure out kind of that root cause. And I feel like stakeholder engagement, if we're really trying to re-engage and think about how we're engaging our community around district initiatives or the district work or turnaround or a vision forward, we need to know what those things are first.
The way I'd put it to you is, in my mind, I'm wondering whether you're not as capable as these people to undertake that task.
I don't feel, I feel like there's a disconnect between our community. I feel like, there's a trust issue, and I feel like.
You don't have their trust?
I feel like I have the trust, but not for the people that want to be with their voices heard more relevantly. I think we don't have that trust. I feel like there's always, I'm just upstairs with the ELD Advisory Committee. They're feeling the same kind of distrust, even though we're saying we want to, we need your feedback. We experienced this with the DAC as well. They don't trust the district in our efforts. And so how do we really rebuild that trust and work in a common vision collectively?
So would these consultants try to improve the trust within the district or trust among the, I'm not sure which way the arrows point, so to speak, in terms of a transitive verb.
Right.
And
I think
I'm trying to because I think you're a capable fellow, and I'm questioning why. I understand you're teasing out some different elements here.
I think there's
they're
a
not
third
new.
party that
We've dealt with them, and I'm just questioning what some outside person is going to do that we don't tell us that we don't already know.
Right, and I think it's more about we need a third party that can be kind of in the neutral space.
We're not neutral.
And I think any way you look at it, I think we're all biased in a way, working for the district, working outside the district, our perception of the district, it's all biased. And I feel like we need people to be unbiased and a third party that will listen people and feel like they've actually been heard. Because I think as much work that I try to do around community engagement in the district, I could always say, we want your voice, we want to hear your voice, even with the parent satisfaction survey. People just don't fill out the survey. They don't trust the district. They don't believe, even with DAC and their recommendations to the board, they really felt like their work is going to go unnoticed and not taken fully into consideration. And so those are those things that I feel like we need a third party to actually look at that. Just even with contention with the politics around ELD or biliteracy or parent-teacher, there needs to be a third party there. And I think that's always been that's what we need in this district.
Okay.
And I think it's deeply rooted. So it's like really looking at this deep-rooted stuff. And I need a counseling degree for that here. And I only do community engagement. But that's why I feel this is necessary. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Jesse. Okay. So with that, the only thing we have left is communications, general, other, and we may or may not have an executive session after the board meeting. Okay? Thank you all.
Thank
Thank you all for being here.